question is he a criminal? Is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law.
The empire is crumbling. The man who once ruled music, fashion, and culture now stands on the edge of total destruction. According to shocking revelations from Gene Deal, the bodyguard who once stood inches from Diddy during his prime, the mogul, is no longer just facing a courtroom verdict. He is facing total financial collapse for years. Whispers have circulated that did. He kept his enemies quiet with money, but Deal claims it wasn't whispers at all. It was reality. Tens of millions of dollars every month funneled into a sprawling network of payoffs and underground payroll of victims, witnesses, and accomplices. The cash didn't buy loyalty, it bought silence, and now that money has run out. This month, the checks didn't clear. The silence is breaking, and suddenly the walls around him don't look like walls at all. They look like a cage.
The centerpiece of a lot of what happened during direct testimony were freak-offs. And what the prosecution tried to show was that he forced and or coerced her into doing these freak-offs. And we've talked about this earlier this week, that at least my opinion is that in a lot of these, the prosecution just didn't close the loop. It was something she felt.
We have to pause and consider the scale. Imagine a man bleeding tens of millions just to keep his past locked away, spreading hush money like confetti at a party that never ends. But that party is over. Courtrooms are buzzing. Lawyers are sharpening their knives, and insiders say hundreds of lawsuits are about to surface at once. These aren't just petty claims. They're allegations stretching back decades stitched together by the very people who once feared speaking as Gene Deal. Put it bluntly, he is finished. When those closest to you start calling time of day, you know the empire isn't just falling. It's already in rubble, and the timing couldn't be worse. Diddy has already been convicted on 2 counts under the Mann Act, with prosecutors describing his infamous freak-offs in luxury hotels from New York to Las Vegas, Ahadi Turks and Caicos. Harrowing video evidence of him assaulting Cassie, his long-term partner, was already shown in court, leaving no doubt in the public eye that the myth of brother love had curdled into something darker. Prosecutors were crystal clear in their filing. He masterminded every aspect of freak-offs, and now with no cash left to keep the floodgates sealed, every detail, every flight, every witness. Every night of excess is about to be replayed in the courts and in the headlines. The legal system isn't done with him. The media isn't done with him, and perhaps most terrifying for Diddy, the people he once paid to stay silent are no longer bound by fear or finance. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm just really, I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck 21 years later.
The victims are speaking, the witnesses are flipping, and the secrets buried for decades are finally coming to light. Already, high-powered lawyers across the country are preparing filings with some estimating that over 100 new claims could hit his desk before sentencing. These aren't just allegations of personal misconduct. They're accusations of a sprawling operation that blurred the line between nightlife, empire, and criminal enterprise. Suddenly, prosecutors who once struggled to prove racketeering may find their evidence gift wrapped by ex-staff, former lovers, and even accomplices who no longer have any incentive to stay quiet. The courtroom could soon become a theater, with each new lawsuit bringing another witness, another recording, another shocking reveal, and then comes the rumor that refuses to fade away. The alleged offshore accounts. Whispers have circulated for years about Cayman Islands accounts tied to Diddy accounts that allegedly held the real hush money, the real slush fund. They kept everything afloat. Could this be where the missing millions went? If exposed, those accounts wouldn't just show financial mismanagement. They could prove years of systematic cover-ups. Industry veterans speculate that forensic accountants are already circling tracing wires, peeling back layers of shell companies following the money trail that could connect every scandal from Los Angeles hotel suites to Caribbean islands. The irony here is brutal. The very stash meant to preserve his empire may become the evidence that demolishes it.
Is he this gangster that behind the scenes is that him? Or is that people
Shout
running?
out to Wendy Williams.
We've seen this pattern before. Empires undone not by the original crime, but by the cover-up. Nixon had the tapes. Enron had the ledgers, and now Diddy may have Cayman accounts, offshore vaults that shine a light not just on hush money, but on potential fraud, tax evasion, and financial betrayal at a level that makes the headline trials look like the prologue. If prosecutors or civil lawyers get their hands on those records, they won't just expose Diddy's payments, they'll map the entire network of who got paid when and why. Names of celebrities, politicians, industry players, people who have so far skated by could suddenly appear on wire transfers and transaction logs. Who else might go down with him? That's the real question. Burning across Hollywood and Wall Street right now. But money trails aren't the only ghosts rising. There is another rumor, darker, more personal, more devastating. The infamous Cassie tapes for years. Insiders whispered that Diddy recorded private encounters, that he weaponized footage of partners and accomplices. Not for fun, but for control. Cassie herself testified that recordings were used as blackmail, hanging over her like a sword. Those tapes were his arsenal, his insurance policy, his way of ensuring silence, even when checks didn't arrive on time. But now where it is, some of these tapes are circulating underground, passed quietly between former insiders, whispered about in hushed tones among industry fixers. They're no longer his weapon, they're everyone else's.
Continue to engage in all these freak-offs with him, and he sounds really pissed off.
Hey, I really don't know what's going on with you, but I just want to just give you a heads up that I'm about to really disappear on you. You feel me? I'm not going to be playing these games with you at all, at all. So I don't know, you think you silent treating me, and you think I'm going to be, nah, you'll have a rude awakening.
And here is where it gets chilling. These tapes aren't just evidence. They're weapons for years. They silenced victims, reminding them that their reputations, their careers, their families could be destroyed with one leak. But in the current climate, when prosecutors are desperate for leverage and plaintiffs' lawyers smell blood in the water, these recordings could become the final nail in Diddy's coffin. Imagine one of those tapes surfacing in open court, not as a threat from him, but as evidence against him. Imagine the fallout if a star's name appears. If an industry titan is seen complicit, if the tapes reveal not just Diddy's actions, but a circle of powerful enablers, that's the nightmare scenario. Gripping Hollywood right now, because if the tapes go public, it won't just be Diddy. On trial, the spotlight will widen careers, reputations, entire brands could be torched overnight. The whispers suggest it isn't a question of if, but when, and when that happens. The story of Diddy won't just be about a mogul undone by greed and violence. It will be about a cultural reckoning, a revelation of who stood beside him, who played along, and who stayed silent. While the empire rotted from within, the tapes may already be out there, and if they surface in the coming wave of lawsuits, the scandal could explode far beyond one man. The question now is simple. Who else might be dragged into this scandal? If these tapes go public,
once worked together a long time ago. They're not friends now. They don't like each other. And yeah, 50 has taken every shot, especially when Diddy has been down.
While the world fixates on the rumors of offshore money and shadowy tapes, the real collapse may be happening inside Diddy's own camp. Those ones closest to him are scrambling not to protect him, but to protect themselves. We're hearing whispers of assistants quietly contacting lawyers, old advisors making late-night calls to prosecutors, even former friends testing the waters for plea deals. It's not loyalty anymore, it's survival. His inner circle is described as a palace in free fall, where every guard, every servant, every confidant is racing for the exits before the walls fully cave in. When people who built their careers on his name start running, we have to ask, do they know something worse is still coming? Court filings already point to dozens of insiders who are aware of, if not directly involved in the so-called freak-offs. Some of these individuals are now reportedly negotiating with authorities, offering cooperation in exchange for reduced exposure. Imagine the scale of betrayal, people who once carried his bags or arranged his travel, now sitting across from investigators recounting details once thought buried forever. The deeper prosecutors dig, the more it looks like this wasn't a one-man show butts. sprawling operation, and when operations collapse, it's the lieutenants who flip first. Could we be watching the early stages of a cascade where every member of his empire turns witness?
Would it prosecute him if it was just a manic?
They prosecuted him on all these other things, and they did find him guilty of this, so that still counts.
The jurors don't always get it right. We don't have to agree with their decision.
I just don't know because I wasn't sitting in the courtroom. You got to see the witnesses. Why didn't they believe Cassie? Why didn't they believe James?
How does a man who once believed himself untouchable cope with the collapse of his empire in prison? Did he is no longer the master of his environment? Rumors swirl that his demeanor has shifted dramatically from commanding mogul to restless inmate unable to accept his new reality. The guards allegedly describe him as pacing his cell for hours, obsessively replaying moments of his trial, while fellow prisoners whisper about his unpredictable temper and late-night outbursts. For a man who thrived on control, the stripped-down monotony of incarceration may be eating away at him, more viciously than the bars themselves. We have to remember, this is someone who built an entire persona on power, wealth, and command over others. To go from private jets and sprawling estates to a crowded detention facility in Brooklyn is not just a fall from grace. It's psychological shock. Insiders hint that he's desperate to project strength, keeping his posture rigid in public areas, but in private moments, he appears haunted, muttering about betrayal and broken loyalty. The paranoia, they say, is unmistakable. He fears not only the prosecutors, but also the very people who once shared his inner circle, convinced that every name he trusted may now be talking to the government.
Mandatory. You didn't fall within one of the exceptions. What now happens when you've been convicted of 2 of those particular charges? That's what the judge is going to be looking at. And again, right now, considering it sounds like statements that the defense made, essentially admitting that Sean Combs is somebody who has had personal problems, but they were doing so to try and argue that he should not be found guilty.
And that paranoia reportedly extends to the idea of leaks. He knows the walls have ears, and yet he allegedly tries to maintain influence even from behind bars, using back channels to issue instructions to associates. Still on the outside, the irony is brutal. The same tactics that once kept his empire intact now appear as futile. Attempts to control a crumbling narrative, rumors claim. He's obsessed with monitoring the media coverage, desperate to know which stories are gaining traction, and furious when tales of offshore accounts or secret tapes dominate headlines. It's a portrait of a man consumed not just by legal peril, but by the loss of the myth he created. Prison psychologists who have studied similar cases note that high-profile figures often experience what they call status shock, an almost violent reaction to the sudden erasure of privilege. For Diddy, that shock may be manifesting as erratic swings between confidence and despair. One day he said to boast that he'll walk free and rebuild his empire the next. He retreats into silence, refusing to interact with anyone. Such volatility doesn't just unsettle guards and inmates. It feeds into the speculation that his mental state is unraveling under the weight of the scandal.
This was when his personal assistant was on the stand, and they were asking him about that he had witnessed that Sean Diddy Combs had taken, and he talked about and he said that one of those pills was in the shape of President Obama's face. Got some reaction from the juries as if just to make an acknowledgement as to, oh, that's really interesting. That was in the shape of President Obama's face.
Adding to this, strain are the whispers that he has attempted to negotiate with allies outside for protection of his legacy. Reports suggest he's asked lawyers not just to fight his convictions, but to shield his brand, his music catalog, and even his children's futures from being swallowed in the collapse. But with lawsuits, mounting assets frozen, and his name increasingly toxic in the industry, those efforts seem like a losing battle. Every move to salvage his image only reminds the world how far he has fallen and how little control he truly has left, and yet there's a chilling quality to his resilience. Even in this state, Diddy appears unwilling to fully conceive defeat. He still reportedly speaks as though the empire can be reclaimed. That one deal, one pardon, one stroke of luck could turn the tide, but the longer he waits in that cell, the more hollow those hopes sound. But we're watching isn't just a legal downfall. It's the psychological unmasking of a man who built his life on invincibility, now confronted with the one opponent he cannot outspend, outmaneuver, or silence time itself that he has.
That he has with others. And just because no one else has been charged, which normally in a RICO case, you would have others charged. It was a statute designed to get mob bosses, trying to get at criminal behavior that's like a web of criminal behavior that you can't necessarily prove like the one thing or the statute of limitations expired on the other thing, but you're just showing this bad guy who's operating what's clearly an enterprise that over and over engages in criminal problems or criminal acts.
Legal insiders suggest prosecutors are quietly building a new case, not just around Diddy himself, but around the entire machine that enabled him. Travel agents who booked flights assistants, who sourced party supplies, bodyguards who looked the other way, suddenly all of them are vulnerable when the cash dried up. Their protection evaporated too. And let's not forget, prosecutors already labeled him the mastermind of everything, saying he transported, he directed, he personally engaged. Those lines weren't just about him. They were about everyone orbiting him. The danger for Diddy is that the very people who once shielded him may now provide the government with the damning testimony needed to strip away whatever defenses he has left, and then looming over the entire chaos comes the political wildfire. Could Diddy's salvation lie in the hands of the most controversial man in American politics? The rumors of a Trump pardon are no longer just fringe gossip. They've been reported, dissected, and debated across Washington and Hollywood alike. We know Trump once counted Diddy as a friend, mingling at Manhattan parties and charity galas, but we also know their relationship soured. When did he criticize him publicly, calling for his political downfall, and now Trump himself has admitted it? Pardoning Diddy would be more difficult because of those words. Still, insiders claim the idea hasn't been taken off the table, with some calling it a distraction tactic as Trump faces his own firestorms.
Why did he walk that back, do you think?
Picture the scenario. Diddy, freshly sentenced, facing years behind bars, suddenly rescued by a presidential pardon? The uproar would be seismic. Victims would rage, activists would mobilize, entire communities would feel betrayed. Industry rivals who cheered his downfall would be forced to confront the possibility of his return. But for Trump, the calculus is different. A pardon wouldn't just save Diddy. It would dominate headlines, draw eyes away from other controversies, and cast him as the ultimate dealer of power, deciding who gets punished and who walks free. Could the fate of one of hip-hop's fallen? Kings really become a pawn in a larger political game. Already the whispers are getting louder. Associates of Diddy have reportedly been lobbying, pushing his case in Washington, while opponents like Curtis 50 Cent Jackson have sworn to block it. The irony is almost cinematic. Two moguls who feuded for decades now colliding on a battlefield that isn't music but politics. If Trump signs that pardon, he ignites a storm of outrage. If he refuses, Diddy remains trapped in a system already stripping him of wealth, power, and allies. Either way, the spectacle promises to overshadow everything else in the months to come. And we know this much. A pardon wouldn't end the lawsuits, the tapes, the offshore trail. It would only pour gasoline on an already burning scandal.
I thought he was this clean businessman who rise to the top because he was such a powerful and, smart, educated man. I had no idea that he had this other side to him. And when I started to get exposed to his lifestyle, I started to really realize, this guy has an addiction. It's not just, once every few weeks, it's every day, every hour.
No matter what happens, one thing is certain, the fallout will be catastrophic. This isn't just about one man's downfall. It's about an empire unraveling, a culture confronting its shadows, and powerful players across music, fashion, and politics bracing for what might come next. The lawsuits are only beginning. The leaks are only starting. The betrayals inside his circle have just begun to surface. And those rumor tapes, if they see daylight, the scandal won't just stain Diddy. It will consume everyone tied to him. We're staring at the edge of something bigger than a trial, bigger than a conviction. This could be the undoing of an entire era. So what do we really think? What secrets are still buried? And who will be the next to fall as this scandal spirals out of control? Let us know in the comments, because the storm isn't ending here. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, empires don't just crumble. They collapse in waves. Goodbye for now.